Welcome into the Just Basketball Show for August 17th, 2023. I'm Chris Manning. That is Brendon Kleen. Thanks again to Dylan Heiser on production. Today's show, we're going to talk about three big-name players being out of the FIBA World Cup, which is a real bummer for that tournament, and particularly I think some of those nations. Paige Bueckers, ever heard of her, has been cleared. She's on the way back. We got some slop of the week, which is Joel Embiid, James Harden related, as it tends to be right now. And we're going to talk about Aces Liberty Round 3. The New York Liberty are your Commissioner's Cup champs for 2023. And Brendon, I also, when we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about how I feel like this is just like further proof that the NBA's tournament is going to work. I want to get to that later a little bit too, because I'm just pilled now. I'm tournament pilled now, so we'll talk about that. But I want to tell you first about our friends at Homage. Homage is an ultra-comfortable specialty apparel company that uses vintage-inspired designs to pay homage to the greatest stories, traditions, and figures across sports, music, and pop culture. They have a ton of great NBA, WNBA, NFL, all that amazing stuff. Sometimes they do starter jacket drops as well. I desperately would like a brown starter jacket from them. Someone send it to my address, please. And you can support them and support us. Go to the link below in our description of this podcast, wherever you're watching or listening. Click that link. Go buy yourself or someone you care about something nice from there, and some of the money from your purchase comes back to support the Just Basketball. So shout out to Homage. Go check out their amazing, super soft products. You won't regret it. Brendon, let's start with the FIBA World Cup.
Let's do it.
3 injuries. Jamal Murray is going to rest. He will not play. Obviously, for him, this is, he had that long recovery from the ACL. I wonder if that has something to do with just making sure his body is correct. Giannis had left knee cleanup surgery in June. He put out a very long Instagram post detailing that he hopes to play at the Olympics next summer and bring his team glory, so he seemed pretty bummed by it. And then Kristaps Porzingis is going to miss it with plantar fasciitis. Obviously, Giannis is the big name here. Murray's NBA champion. Would have been cool to see him play for a really upstart candidate team that's really on the way up in terms of their national team program. And Porzingis is a big name as well. This does not, Brendon, damper my excitement for this tournament, but I mean, these names are going to take away from the overall quality of this tournament. They absolutely have to.
Yeah, I think from the tournament standpoint, you look at Murray not playing and Canada just taking a little bit of a hit, although Shea is better than Jamal Murray, I would say, if not, maybe a little less experience. So there was going to be some overlap. I think they can survive it. They were so talented already that maybe, Shea's cousin, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, slides in. Maybe it's more Lou Dort and Dylan Brooks. They have the talent. Corey Joseph is still around. So they should still be a major factor. If not, like with Murray, they might have just been the outright favorites. Now they're just like one of the favorites. The Giannis part, though, from the FIBA World Cup standpoint, actually, to me, is the most disappointing. It's obviously worrisome for the Bucks, but Giannis, Greece was in Team USA's group. So they were kind of the only big matchup that the U.S. was going to have in the first round in terms of NBA intrigue. So that kind of sucks. And then Porzingis, to me, it's just a really bad start to a pretty important season in Boston. They all are, but with the expensiveness of this team, the fact that Porzingis was their big move after, trading Marcus Smart and retaining Jaylen Brown, retaining Joe Mazzulla even, to start out the year with an injury-prone guy having an injury, that's probably the biggest NBA impact that we're seeing here. Don't know. It's still, a while till training camp, but that's not the right foot to get started on at all if you're the Celtics.
Literally and figuratively, I would say, because that is a foot injury. I don't know if you meant that kind of punnage there, but I respect it. It works. I think the Giannis one is obviously the big one, but I think the Porzingis one is where I kind of want to... Like, the Giannis one, it's like, if he's right, there's no real concerns there. Like, yeah. And just we'll see, and I kind of would just... like, there's nothing that we've heard, I guess, that would suggest that he's not just going to be fine when the season starts.
Sure.
The Porzingis one is the one that would make me feel the most scared, if I'm anybody, just because we already have, as we've talked about, there are some concerns with what that is, and you already gave him this contract extension, and he's a 7-footer who has had injuries in the past that really did derail him in some ways, and now he has this plantar fasciitis thing, which, like, you can deal with that over and over. You can have nagging issues with this. Like if I'm Boston, I would be sweating a little bit today, wondering how healthy Porzingis is and what you have to do to kind of keep him healthy. And that's particularly, I think, true, Brendon, for an organization whose bigs are Robert Williams, who's had a lot of injury issues the last couple of years, and Al Horford, who is very much closer to the end than the beginning and can only tap into that, well of eternal youth so many times before that kind of runs its course. This would make me feel very nervous if I'm Joe Mazzulla, if I'm Brad Stevens, if I'm that entire Celtics organization.
Yeah, for sure. It's also, in terms of Latvia, they were the group of death. They had Canada's in their group and France. And so Porzingis being out alleviates that group a little bit too. I mean, any of the Canada-France games are going to be must-see. Good news for Porzingis, he had the torn ACL in 2018, but he hasn't had foot stuff particularly, so this is not like a recurrence of things that he's dealt with in the past, but obviously knee, ankle, heel a lot over the course of his career, so not great. But yeah, I mean, all three of these guys, I think it's the right decision. This tournament is not worth it. World Cup is more important, or the Olympics are more important, obviously the NBA season. Easy for me to say. I know there is an amount of pride that goes into it, but money-wise, clearly the priority for them. So can't fault anybody. It makes the tournament a little worse. It gives these Celtics and Bucks especially a little bit of uncertainty going into the NBA season, but should still be fun.
We're going to do a full FIBA preview before this tournament really kicks off, but Brendon, I want to ask you, is there a group you're most excited about?
Yeah, it's that one with Canada and France. I mean, From a group stage standpoint, I think it has to be. I mean, you have... No other group really has like multiple great teams. I mean, Group E has Germany and Australia. That should be good. That would maybe be my second pick, but
and Lowry, and I was gonna go that one just because you had Germany plus Australia plus Lowry Markkanen's Finland.
Yeah,
Parkkinen. I was gonna go there. That was gonna be my hipster swerve, but you kind of beat me to it.
I mean, even Japan has Yuta Watanabe and Rui Hachimura, so they're not some unknown team either. So yeah, probably that one.
Lowry Markkanen post military service. What's the vibe? I just can't. How much is his hair growing back? Lots of questions.
Well, in his kind of breakout season last year started with Eurobasket for Finland, so he seems to be kind of at his best with those guys.
And that Australian roster is really just has a bunch of names. I'm just sure. You know what I mean?
It'll be interesting to see how they mix the youth and the old guys with Patty Mills and Joe Ingles and those types versus Josh Giddey and Matisse Thybulle.
Yeah, and they haven't fully turned it over to even the next generation of younger Australians that are coming up, maybe playing domestically or that have been drafted or will be drafted in the coming years, which is kind of an interesting part of it. But maybe that's and that'll be Giddey jump shot watch as well. I would say to some degree. So we'll talk more about FIBA as it gets closer. Hope all those guys get healthy. I agree with you. It's the right decision for all of them. I think that leaves it at that for now. All right, let's go to the slop, Brendon, because I want to double up the women's basketball part of this. Let's go to the slop. You threw this in our team Slack, and why don't you walk us through what Joel Embiid has done here on Twitter.com?
So slop of the week, X.com, first of all. Slop of the week is where we take things from the NBA world that may or may not be news and discuss them with the significance and detail and importance that they deserve, which can be high or low depending. So part of what I want to throw back to you to decide is just how important this actually is, but it's not an accident. I mean, we've been around in sports in the social media age long enough to know that this is not an accident or nothing. He took Philadelphia out of his location, which he had set on Twitter, and I believe he had some sort of Sixers center or something like that, like a lot of athletes do. And that has gone too. He has updated the location to be the city in Cameroon that he, I believe, was born in or lived in. So, kind of doing a little bit of fix up there to make it seem like a natural thing. But again, not an accident. So I'll ask you, if it's not an accident and it's very obvious that he did this, is it important? Does it matter? How sloppy are we talking here?
I feel like this is like if we were watching I Think You Should Leave, this is like a very sloppy steak.
Okay.
Joel Embiid is one of those guys that I just don't feel like this stuff is never not intentional. I just think this guy on social media, in his public persona, in what he says and what he doesn't say, how he carries himself, I think it's all very intentional. He remembers things. Like, this isn't a guy to me that isn't, like, didn't, like the rest of us, see the James Harden thing on social media. I'm sure he's pretty pissed about it. I'm sure he has some feelings about it. You know, he hasn't said anything publicly. We haven't got like an interview with him. We haven't seen like a real comment. This is like the closest thing we have to. So maybe that's why I'm putting value in this. But it's something, because he strikes me as a guy that is going to do this stuff intentionally. And I don't, you know, like I think there are a lot of guys that have. Look, maybe this is something deep down that is just like, hey, his brand manager, there's like a shoe, there's something with his shoe coming, and it's going to be Cameroon focused or something, and that's what this is, and it's just like a business thing. That, like, there are guys whose socials are just run by their, like, they have a team, and I think a lot of people just do have a team overseeing their socials. It's just with them.
Even if it's that, it's like,
it's weird. I mean, it's the timing.
You got to get out in front of it in some kind of way.
Yeah,
like the people who would run it don't live under a rock. They got to know how this is going to be seen, you know?
So that's what I'm getting at. So it's like you didn't put out like a teaser video or something. There's just something like, there's some annoyance here. That's the only way I can read what's going on here. This feels like, does it actually mean anything? Like, I don't think it's hard to ascribe value to any of the social media stuff. Sometimes it just is, because, you know, it's just like when a rapper or a musician deletes all their posts and then puts up like because they're getting for new albums. Like, is this that? Is this just annoyance? Like, I don't know, but it's something.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I agreed. It's intentional. I just think after sitting on the Harden stuff and thinking about Philadelphia after we talked about it a little bit a couple days ago on the first episode of the week, that I don't know why the Sixers wouldn't be doing every possible single thing that they can do to trade for Damian Lillard right now. And I was thinking about Tyrese Maxey a little bit more, who we've talked about, and we did an episode of guys who shouldn't be traded, who should be traded but won't be, and I had Maxey on that list. With the level of desperation that you're kind of now facing as the Sixers, and not just because Joel Embiid changed his Twitter stuff, but after the Harden thing, the fact that he called Morey out, the fact that Morey has really not done an amazing job building this team, I think it would be clear you'd have to say hired the wrong coach, ended up with Ben Simmons gone. Role players are good but not great. Drafting, you got Maxey, but that's it. This is the swing you have to make right now. Seemed like they popped up in the Lillard sweepstakes at the very beginning, and then he made it clear he wanted to go to Miami. But if Portland's sitting there waiting for an offer that's better, I'm not really sure if Maxey is different than Hero, but he isn't paid yet. Maybe there's a little more value there. Maybe Maxey to a third team makes more sense. Whatever it is, the Sixers should be giving Portland the offer that they've been waiting for that's not the Miami Heat's offer in order to salvage this situation.
Have we ever seen Daryl Morey in a position where things are this desperate for him? Like, is when he traded for Russell Westbrook the same as this? Or is this worse?
I think when he traded for Russell Westbrook, he already knew he was on his way out, because that trade made no sense. And it's just not how Morey has ever done anything.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not even joking. I think a lot of people assumed that at the time, was like, he must see the writing on the wall that this is kind of the last Harden year, and then he's probably gone.
Yeah. That and Morey might have thought he was gone too. This feels like new territory. And Brendon, this is one of the things about general managers that I don't think it's not the easiest thing for us to talk about, because like what we can see, it's not something we can see. It's not even something reporting on. You're always going to get, I think, really great info on. It doesn't work that way when you talk to people about it, because it's something that I understand why it doesn't get talked about a lot. But for me, I think one of the things we don't understand enough about all the general managers and decision makers in the league and have enough insight on is how they are as people persons. Or like how well they are at actually interacting with people. Because I think a big part of being a coach, but also an executive, is managing relationships with agents, managing relationships with players, managing a relationship so like that if things do get haywire, you can weather these storms. Like in my backyard, let's say, one of the things about Kobe Altman that doesn't always make sense to me has been like how he handled the Kevin Love stuff, how just like it didn't seem like any of the players for a certain stretch just like didn't trust him for whatever reason. Like there just seems like something a little off in the people interactions at times. It just has felt that way from the outside looking in. Daryl Morey has never struck me as someone who is like great at like not seeing these guys as assets at times and managing actual relationships and like understanding
not to cut you off, but I think we absolutely know what Daryl Morey's people skills are. They're bad. That's his number one knock. He's awful at that part of the job, and he's gotten except with Harden blowback apparently. Pretty often for it.
Yeah. So I guess it's trying to be generous, but this is like the ultimate.
It's not like you're throwing punches at somebody who's never like just making stuff up. That's out there. That's very. I mean, Chris Paul said on the record. He told me 1 week prior to going to the Oklahoma City Thunder, not that I wouldn't be traded, period, that I would specifically not be traded to the Oklahoma City Thunder. And then Daryl Morey did exactly that 1 week afterward. I mean.
So, okay, I'd forgotten about that. So, okay, I amend what I've said that Daryl Morey like maybe just sucks dealing with people. This is the ultimate test case of like, hey, you have the next guy that a lot of team would want to give up a bunch of stuff for. Can you keep him happy enough to keep him from not being really pissed off at you because James Harden's calling him a liar and you botched the best chance at a co-star has, or you can go get him Dame Lillard to replace Harden, even if that also means losing Maxey. Like this is just and he just hired a new coach. Like there's just so much on the line here for Morey, and like how he holds this together is going to be fascinating. Like I understand the players drive the league. I understand that intrigue is up here compared to what I'm kind of getting at. But I think that is one of the most vital things that in sports broadly, but for our context, the NBA right now, that to me is one of those things that I don't think we talk about enough. And that this is a big moment for Daryl Morey, like absolutely being able to be a leader in his organization.
Yeah, I think his future in the NBA is on the line. He's only 50, but he has one conference finals appearance to his name as an executive. He rebuilt the Rockets. He sort of helped reset the Sixers and is already running up against it here. At a certain point, the wonderkind, nerd Elvis, dork Elvis stuff doesn't just take you as far as it used to when your actual success doesn't match up. If he botches this, if he really does lose it with Embiid and the Sixers blow up, he's clearly getting fired here, and I'm not sure what amount of other teams would want him. I mean, you never say never. Owners get convinced to try stuff. He's obviously very smart, knows what he's doing with this stuff, but I don't think that his future is guaranteed in the league. So it obviously will spark a fire for him, but it doesn't seem like there's much of an out here unless they can swing for somebody like Lillard or, I guess, find a way to bring Harden back. I don't know if that would satisfy Embiid, though.
Yeah, I don't know. And also, I don't think Morey has like a Bob Myers to ESPN. Like, he doesn't strike me as someone who would be particularly good at being on television.
No. I mean, if anyone's ever heard him on a podcast, he's very forthcoming, very kind of jokey and light, but he sounds like a nerd. He sounds like a dude in a lab coat. I mean, I'm not going to be. It's not like it's a bad thing. Well, it's just what he sounds like. Those people don't go on TV. There's a reason like. TV people are TV people. He's not one of those.
Coming up next on First Take.
Teach classes or something like Sam Hinkie does.
Coming up next on First Take, Stephen A. and Daryl Morey are going to debate Dak Prescott and his future with the Cowboys. Does he have the clutch gene? That's coming up next.
Also, if he ever appeared on any show like that, the amount of skewering over the analytics revolution would just get ugly. Like, he would just be the punching bag for everything everybody's ever gotten angry about with analytics in the NBA. He already is, but he gets to hide behind being a team employee. So like he needs to have a future in the league. He wants to have a future in the league. He has a very cushy job in Philadelphia that he kind of hand selected. And if he can't keep this team together when so much was set up for them to dominate for years, then he deserves to be on the outs.
So a Perk and Daryl Morey podcast is not something you think he's interested in. Perk, Swagoo, and Morey.
I mean, anything's possible.
Okay.
The worldwide leader. They've pulled rabbits out of hats before. Maybe that's what is needed to save ESPN.
Yeah, that's going to goose the stock prices as they try to figure out that business. Big ESPN business story in the world right now, by the way. So you should keep an eye on that. But all right, let's any final Embiid thoughts? I derailed this a little bit, so I apologize. But
we will get plenty of time to talk about Joel Embiid, but just a little additional step toward chaos.
Well, with the Sixers, I was we got the group stage announcements, the dates for these games the other day, Brendon.
For the in-season tournament, yeah.
Yeah, for the in-season tournament. And I was like, look, I really want BetMGM or some other sportsbook to give me odds for the groups because I think the Cavs in that group should be the favorite just based on you're betting on insecurity in Philly and 3 bad teams. Like Indiana being maybe the next best option. I think someone weird the team we don't expect to be maybe the best team in that group to get out of that group.
All right, we keep joking about how much August content we're doing. You trying to break down the Cavs odds in their in-season tournament.
I would go through. Look, I would.
August.
No, Brendon. Yesterday when these came out, I was literally, can I get any sportsbook that'll give me odds across every single group because I want to know how they weight them versus title odds. And I don't think there's a good way to do it for year one. And maybe there's a formula. Maybe there's some NBA stuff you could draw on, but the games are different. The data sets are different. I just wanted to know how that's going to work. Do I need hobbies? Maybe.
What
maybe
I thought of
hobbies.
is going to Vegas for the final. That was where my mind went.
If it was closer, I'd be there. Maybe I'll get there is a Cleveland to Vegas Spirit flight I could take.
I remember your experience with that the first time around. It didn't seem like it was super pleasant.
The way back was fine. The way there was maybe this. Aside from coming back from New York just this past time, that was the worst plane experience I've ever had in my life. I've only had one other worst plane experience, and that one. Oof. Just don't drink the margaritas on the Spirit flight at midday. Come on. Let me sleep. Okay, drink a high noon in the airport like a real person. Come on. Paige Bueckers, Brendon, is back. She is back playing pickup. She is back cleared for activity. She's going to be back for UConn this upcoming fall. But I think we have 3 big. I think this is one of 3 big women's college basketball stories we have. We have Paige. We have Caitlin Clark. And her encore of last year, and we have LSU defending their title, adding Haley Van Lith. This is going to be a loaded year, but the Paige one to me is almost the most interesting because this was the number 1 player in her class. This was the presumed number 1 pick in her class for the longest time until Caitlin is, I think, overtaken her now. She's had some injury stuff now. This UConn team is, we'll see exactly what they are. Ozzie Flood maybe hasn't hit the highs you might have hoped for her coming out of high school as well. There's a lot on the line for Paige this year, and we need to see how healthy she is. I just cannot wait to see her because she's an amazing player, but let's also see what this really looks like as we get going here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be pretty hard for me to see her surpass Caitlin Clark no matter what happens this year. I think she has an inside track to be the 2nd overall pick, which is obviously...
So you would have her over Angel Reese, I guess, is what I guess the follow-up to that.
Yeah, I need to see, and I'm not even saying it as an Angel Reese thing. I'm saying it as I need to watch her more with an eye toward the WNBA than I have. But I just think what Paige Bueckers can do as an offensive player and what she can do creating for others, creating for herself, all of that to me, I would have her higher. But I'm looking, a WNBA mock draft from NBA Draft Room, and he does really good work. I think his name's Mike. He has her 5th. Paige.
Yeah.
So
the win one right now has Caitlin Clark, then Cameron Brink, then Paige Bueckers, then Aaliyah Edwards, then Rickea Jackson from Tennessee, then Camila Cardoso from South Carolina, and then Angel Reese is 7th, and then Georgia Moore is 8th.
Yeah, I mean, scouting in the W is always hard. The sample sizes are, I guess they're the same in college, but, players just have different pathways, and the college stuff, they have to stay longer, but it's harder to maybe gauge their ceiling because they can be dominant in college for a long time before they have to go pro. There's a lot, so it very clearly is up in the air. I think from a UConn standpoint, this has a chance to be a really, really, really great team, though. because you just listed Aaliyah Edwards. She's basically their center. She's a projected top 5 pick, as is AZ Fudd, who will go the following year. She is, I actually think she's pretty amazing. She's like one of the best shooting prospects we've ever seen. And then they have Nika Mule, who is a likely first-round pick and even better shooter potentially than Fudd, just not quite as big. And then a senior, Aubrey Griffin, who is a super senior kind of COVID eligibility person who should just round them out. Like, if they all stay healthy, they'll be right there, and Paige will have a really good chance to dominate. I really like her. I think she plays the right way and makes her teammates better, and I value that really highly. Either way, good to see her back on the court. She's had 2 entire seasons pretty rocked by injuries.
She's a superstar if she's healthy, and there's literally no question about that. There's zero question about this. It's all about her health at this point. Mm-hmm. And this is the year you mentioned this UConn team. They're also getting back 3 post players who missed last year. Like, they're getting back they're getting back a post player who missed all of last season with injury to add to 2 other post players that they have coming back. Like, they're gonna be pretty loaded up front in a way that they maybe haven't in a couple years, which is interesting. And if Paige plays up to her potential, she could be the best player in women's college basketball. I don't think that's like an insane thing to say, that she could have that kind of year all around. I understand the injury stuff, and I understand that Caitlin Clark hype and performances are to the moon and all this stuff. But it's like not out of the question that Paige has that kind of like comeback year, and it's like, oh, y'all must have forgot who I am. Like, that would not be at all surprising if she just pops off that way. And we're at the Final Four when you're visiting me in wonderful Cleveland, Ohio in March and early April, and we're at the title game, and Paige Bueckers is holding up having won the Final Four most outstanding player and wins a national title. Like, that is very much in the cards for her if she's healthy and the UConn team is as good as it can be.
Well, and that's why I mentioned that she's on a better team, and that will matter. That'll matter in terms of hype. That'll matter in terms of team, winning and success and how far they go in the tournament and all that stuff. There's a reason UConn players tend to be first-round picks, even if they're not always the best WNBA players. It's a spotlight. It's insulation from a talent standpoint. It's all that stuff. So she stands to benefit from that a lot. I think she's a better half-court playmaker than Caitlin Clark is. I think both of them have a ways to go on defense, but Paige might have a little bit of a leg up there. Nobody has the shooting and scoring talent that Clark has. Nobody has the kind of physical toughness quite in the same way, but they're not far apart. And I think the fact that some mock drafts have her, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever at this point is going to feel silly by March.
Yeah, it's again provided health. Like, I could see an argument for 5 just based on if you're worried that her body's not going to hold up. I don't think that's invalid.
Isn't for 7 months, so by then we'll know, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Do you think she's someone that could stay another year in the way that we've talked about Caitlin staying for another year?
I mean, if her health doesn't cooperate, I would think she probably should. Yeah. But if she stays healthy and plays well and they dominate the way that they're capable of, I think she should go pro. But I always think everybody should go pro, and it's probably selfish. I mostly just want to see them. But
in that context, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to see them in the W rather than, okay, there's going to be some other UConn player coming up soon that can fill that void, and UConn will always be there. I just selfishly want to see the best players be pros, so it's probably more where it's coming from.
I don't disagree with that. All right, last topic of the day. The Commissioner's Cup is over. The New York Liberty, Brendon have won. Jonquel Jones gets MVP of the game. They got this without a great Brianna Stewart game. They got this without a great Sabrina Ionescu game. There's a lot of nuances I want to get into, but I just want to ask kind of big picture. How sure are we that the Liberty shouldn't just be the favorites now? They're plus 200 now at BetMGM. They were plus 225 after they beat the Aces in New York. They opened up the season around plus 300. At the very least, to me, I think this feels about right, and it's the value bet if you want to look at it from a betting perspective, I think.
What's Vegas at?
But Vegas is it was still like minus 225. So
yeah,
Vegas,
that doesn't feel right. I think Vegas should be like plus 100.
Yeah, I'm going to double check that, but like the Liberty with these last 2 games and winning in 2 different ways to me has been highly impressive. Yep. And minus 225 for the Aces, plus 200 for the Liberty, plus 3,000 for the Sun. This is a 2-team title race, at least as the betting markets go. And I think the value all right now would be in the Liberty. They've shown in the last two performances that first game was not indicative of a big talent gap. And yes, Candace Parker hasn't played in those last two games. I think we should talk about how much the Aces miss her in this specific matchup. But this is absolutely a title race that the Liberty can absolutely win and win it all this year.
Yeah, I mean, when you say what more could they do, in this case, it's literal. They've beaten the team that they will need to go through, who is presumed to be the favorite. It really is sort of a, like, they need to win by 30 again on Thursday for it to, I mean, maybe they will. I don't know where this is headed. But they will be playing on Thursday night, so we'll get another one real quick.
They could lose that game by 20, and I don't think my opinion would change that much if I'm being entirely honest. I've seen enough the last two games where I'm kind of like, I think this is real. This feels real to me.
It's real. And I think the Aces thing on their side of it, to me, is they need to figure out lineup-wise what their specific game plan, rotation-wise, is going to be against the Liberty. And 1A of that is it's going to include a lot less Kia Stokes. She only played 16 minutes in this game. Some of that was because nobody really played the fourth quarter for them, and she had already sort of gotten benched by that point. So she played like 16 minutes in the first three quarters, really, but it might even need to be less than that. She's getting completely outplayed by Jonquel Jones. They're overhelping and selling out to leave Kia Stokes even right in front of the rim. They're not worried about her. They're sending help to just smother the paint. They're sending help in transition. Their transition defense was amazing in this game, the Liberty. They're holding up on switches when they need to, and that includes Sabrina. That includes Vandersloot to a lesser degree, but especially Laney and Stewie, just absolutely unreal defensive games from both of them. Mm-hmm. And Jonquel just owning the paint. Just dominant. Like the gap between in these two games, how Jonquel Jones has played versus how Kia Stokes has played, that shouldn't be possible against two championship favorites. Like that level of gap between two starting players on that play the same position and match up with one another, that's an emergency. I think if this was a playoff environment on Thursday, Alicia Clark would start over Stokes. I don't know if they'll get desperate enough to do that right now, but they were already showing their hand in the second half that's Vegas's ultimate thing, and then you just have to figure it out from there. Who's playing the minutes to fill out the rest of the bench?
Yeah, you might still get like 10 minutes from Stokes, but I think Clark has to play like 30 minutes a night with how this looks, and it is a pretty.
Yeah, she already kind of does. It's more like who has to play beyond that, like Kirsten Bell. Can they get minutes from Kayla George or Elena Coates, who aren't really like title caliber role players in the W? Like that it is an issue. It's easier said than done because they don't have a lot of depth with Candace out.
Yeah, one is like, is Kelsey Plum going to play like 38 minutes in the finals? I think like that doesn't feel entirely off the table that her and Chelsea Gray are just on the floor basically the entire game. I mean, Chelsea Gray played 37 minutes in this one. Jackie Young played 35. Asia Wilson played 35. Kelsey Plum played 33. Had 5 fouls, which probably limited her minutes a little bit. And that to me feels like you maybe just got to lean on that. And it's not even to say that the Liberty are that deep either, because they're really not. I mean, they played their starters heavy minutes. Thornton played 16. Marino Hontas, who had 17 and was just an absolute flamethrower in this game, only played 14. But she at least like gave them just like a lot of pop off of the bench in this one, and like that was a wild card that swung this game in a lot of ways to make up for Sabrina being 4 of 14 and Stewie being 4 of 16. Brendon, it's like this is maybe what we should have led with, but the Liberty won 82-63. And Brianna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu were combined 8 of 30 from the field and 5 of 13 from 3. The three-pointer, obviously, like that you can live with. That's actually not too bad. But for them to make a combined 8 field goals on 30 shots and for them to win by 19, that's like...
I mean, we kind of
wild
with that, because the reason that they won is because the Aces just couldn't score, right? So
yeah, but I mean to shout out that explicitly, like I think that is just, that feels notable to me when you win a game like that, and you kind of have Jonquel Jones, who you were correct when we talked to Sabrina Merchant, was finding herself in this team, and now and they got this performance from Giannis off the bench. They did more than enough without their 2 best players.
Yeah,
really
Sabrina
just
did hit those 2 threes in the fourth quarter that really closed the game out. And I think to return to your point about the bench, it really comes down to right now the Liberty have 2 good bench players between Thornton, who also hit 2 threes at the end of the third quarter to start to put it out of reach, and then Ionescu just closed the door. and Johannes, who you mentioned, and then Stephanie Dolson, who has now returned but is still kind of working her way back. She missed a lot of the season. I would think she could be part of a factor. She's not quite as mobile defensively as Jonquel or Stewie, so maybe she doesn't play, but she is a good player. It just might not make sense matchup wise. So I think that's all obviously noteworthy from what you would have expected. But you said it at the top, like they've now won games multiple ways. It didn't take a Sabrina explosion in this game to win it, and that matters. That proves it. I mean, the Liberty are just a flat out good defense now. They weren't that. Now they are. But to return to the lineup stuff for a moment, because the most telling part of the game from that standpoint was the close of the third quarter, because the Aces did bench Stokes. They went small with Asia at the 5 and Alicia Clark in the game. They were down 1 when that lineup, and then Jonquel checked in on the other end. So that was the Liberty's base lineup with the 2 bigs versus the Aces small lineup, which is what I think the closing lineups will be if these teams meet in the finals, and even on Thursday. Vegas lost that stretch by 7 points. So even when they made their chess move to go small, they didn't win those minutes the way that they would have hoped, and I think they were uncomfortable with it, which is why, again, I might even just start that lineup on Thursday, because you had Jonquel Jones guarding Alicia Clark, and it felt like they were uncomfortable with how to handle that. They were continuing to include JJ and Stewie's players in the screen, so they were involving them in the defensive action. Doesn't make sense to me. You want to get them out of it. You want to have high post passing, or you want to have cutting, or you want to just isolate Jackie Young on Sabrina Ionescu, do that type of stuff, not set a screen where Stewie can just block your shot at the rim. But at the same time, I thought they got some good stuff with Chelsea Gray as a screener. They were running double drag where she was popping to the top of the key to be kind of a secondary ball handler / 3-point threat off of after she had screened. And when they ran that, they got 3 open threes, 2 of them by Alicia Clark, and she missed both. So some of it's just the way stuff falls. Both teams missed shots at the beginning of this game. Vandersloot's got a little bit more aggressive. Johannes made some threes, and the Liberty were able to get out to a lead. But, Jackie Young missed 2 threes early. Alicia Clark missed those. Asia Wilson got smothered by Stewie again. There was some stuff in this game that would totally have convinced you that both of these teams were equal. It's just, to me, that stretch where you're like, okay, lineups are finally even. This should be where the Aces make their run, and it actually went the other direction.
I think we should talk about the Asia Wilson part of this a little bit, because this is now 2 games. We talked about it last time when she was pretty salty about how she played and said she wasn't concussed in that game against the Liberty. Then last night, coming off of a 3 games in between the 2 Liberty games, Brendon, she had 28, she had 40, which I believe is a career high, and she had 21. Last night she had 30. She had in 35 minutes had 9 points. I want to go back and watch both of these games, or at least her possessions, because I think there's something about what the Liberty are doing, and I would bet it's with the mobility of their bigs, and they have when they have Stewie and Jonquel Jones guarding her, they have 2 players who are both strong enough to at least hang inside and aren't going to get overwhelmed, and are mobile enough to stick with some of what Asia does, and are long enough to really kind of bother. Like, there's a good mix of all these different things they're doing to defend her, and maybe some of it is just she's maybe having off nights, whatever it is. I don't expect her in a final series to average 9 points a game over the course of the finals. That would be surprising if that happened. She's too good for that. But there's something in what the Liberty are doing and how they're defending Asia Wilson. They have the personnel to do it that I think is really throwing a wrench in everything the Aces are doing. And if I'm them, you gotta, I think, maybe find different ways to get her to attack when you match up in the finals, presumably. Maybe not by Thursday because that's such a quick turnaround. But when the games are really mattering and you're playing for the title, I might be looking in that direction.
Yeah, I think this was one of the worst games I can remember her playing. I think that part of what it felt like in this game more than the last one is that Stewie just enveloped her. Stewie just put the clamps down. And there were a lot of possessions where it was just Asia isoing, guarded by Brianna Stewart. And I would anticipate Asia made maybe 1 shot in those spots, considering she only made 2 total. But maybe even bigger than that, to me, the stats that matter when I look at Asia's box score are 0 assists, and only 6 trips to the free throw line. If I'm the Aces and they do play smaller with less Stokes and go away from such a pick and roll heavy half-court offense, I think you try to have Asia getting the ball in quick hit isolations at the top of the arc, at the free throw line, elbow, which is where she gets the ball a lot, and having her try to act as a passer, hoping that the 5-out, the spacing that she has in those situations gives her a little more room. And if she's more of a double threat of passer / scorer, then I think she could have a more effective overall night, even if I think it might be hard for her to have many 25, 30, 35-point games in this particular matchup because of the size that the Liberty have. But if you can make her effective in other ways and make her teammates better, I think that would go a really long way. They were just having too many possessions where they tried to have her seal in the very inside of the paint against Stewie, and it's like, it's not an awful possession. You're talking about an MVP scoring from 3 feet away, but when the person between her and the basket is also an MVP, that's not a high percentage shot. You got to do better than that.
There is a thing that I think coaches both in the men's game and the women's game like to do is they just sometimes like to, they just are like, I trust, like, especially I think former players at times, I do think this is as a thing. They tend to just look at their star players and their best players and say, they're going to do this, they're going to figure this out, and it's not going to be a problem, right? Like, I can just give them the ball and the talent is going to win out. I understand that impulse. A'ja Wilson is the second best player in the WNBA behind Brandon Stewart, in my opinion. She's that good. She's been the MVP of the league. She was the best player on a team that won the finals last year, was the overwhelming favorite to win the finals this year coming into the season, and very well still could win the finals. We're talking about them a little bit maybe negatively right now, but it's because the Liberty have been that good in these last 2 games that they've played, and recency biases came to often be a thing.
And this is really the only matchup that matters. So it's like their record against other teams at the end of the day, it tells us a lot, but this tells us the most. So yes, we should judge them harshly off of this game.
100%. I think it is time for them to have whatever it is, whether it's going to be back screening, whether it's going to be getting her at the elbow in different ways, whether it's just whatever, playing a little faster at times. They have to find a way to get some cross matches. I think they have to find a way to get her attacking smaller players at times. They have to get her ways to get the ball in more empowered positions and not make her doing the work. She's still having like absolutely monster defensive games is the thing. Like she had some defensive seals last night that are just like men or women. It is one of like there's seals that are at this level that it's just like insane that she's doing some of these things. Ridiculous. But like I'm saying A'ja particularly, it's like she's having these bad offensive performances, and yet on the other end you're stealing her sealed Jonquel Jones, a former MVP of this league, and just owning the paint at times. Like she's that good. But on the other end, it's like you have to empower her. I think it's just there's a little lack of creativity, a little lack of everything you've discussed. I'm really curious just to see like what. Again, I don't think it's Thursday because that turnaround is that quick. Mm-hmm. But I think when you get to the playoffs, I think there has to be some alterations to the game plan a little bit. Even if it means tinkering what works for you against every other team, this matchup is so different and such a higher stakes that I think it demands that you do more with it.
Yeah, the Liberty have definitely adjusted more. They've treated these games, I think, more as a special one-off type of thing than the Aces have. I would say if we do see adjustments, especially on the offensive end, I think a way to combine a few things here would be maybe it's not Asia's not going to be the type like even Stewart or Elena Deladon who can really bring the ball up, handle the ball on the perimeter. She's not quite that level of playmaker and ball handler, but maybe it's at the elbow, maybe it's in the post, some rub screen stuff. Have the guard screen for her, and have specifically Ionescu and Vandersloot's defender
put him in the
who they're
put him
defending.
In the, yeah.
Have them screen, and have if they switch that, then great, because you're still getting Stewie and JJ out of the play to a degree, but you're allowing A'ja to attack downhill against a mismatch, against a rotating defense a little bit more. But regardless of if it's A'ja or not, I think Jackie Young is the obvious person to me who also has a lot of room to get better, room to make a bigger impact on these games because, again, she missed some shots early, but she was also one of the better individual creators that Vegas. I think she was the best of the aces scorers in this game, and if she can just get into an even better rhythm, be featured and focused on even more, she's guarded by Sabrina to start these games. And if you allow them to do that, that's a mismatch. Make them pay for that mismatch. But again, I think it speaks to your point of you're not going to losing twice like this should show you're not going to play your game and just like roll to a victory. So I would hope even on Thursday they play with a little bit more purpose and a little bit more of a specialized game plan because it's going to hurt their confidence and kind of momentum even more if they have to lose another one of these games to the obvious opponent we all know is sitting between them and a title.
The other thing I would add is that even if there are possessions where, like, if you do attack Sabrina with Jack Young or whatever, let's say it doesn't work at first, you have to trust that process because you're also going to make Sabrina expel more energy. And if her legs are 5% more tired in the fourth because you've put her in a dozen pick and rolls, or Vandersloot is more worn out by the fourth in that same way because you attacked her more, it's going to pay off for you. That's going to pay over the case of a series in the finals. Like, that is just... There are times where Brendon and I look at WNBA basketball, and I do enjoy that sometimes there is just a little bit more, it is a little more structural at times than the NBA can get. But I think at times, like, you could really look at what the WNBA could do here, and it's just say, take the page out of what all the good coaches in the NBA are doing and say, hey, we're going to put Sabrina Ionescu in a bunch of pick and rolls, and she's going to get worn out by it, and we're going to get good shots out of it. That's just like a win. Even if it changes what you are a little bit, it's worth it to chase your ultimate
Which
goal.
is what
It
the
just
Liberty
is.
have done, I would say. I think another part of why
100%.
they've been able to win these games is the offense is more simple than it was early in the season. I think that they've chilled out a little bit on split cuts and weak side double screens and everybody trying to get a quick post up after they run their action, and it was like a complete zoo in the half court early, and then they were winning still, but it was overly complicated, overly complex for the talent that they had, and I think they've benefited from kind of, settling down a little bit. I think, to me, not to keep harping on the same point, but that's just harder for the Aces without Candace Parker, to be simple with their offense, to rely on pace and movement and just, basic actions. It's a lot harder when you have a paint-bound, zero on offense like Kia Stokes has been.
All right, before I want to just ask you about how I feel about tournaments now that we've gotten through this one and we saw the environment in that game last night seemed amazing. Like, it just from the get-go, it seemed like a big environment, obviously in Vegas, so there is maybe some partisan factors to consider with that. But as of today, Brendon, we did this with Sabrina. I picked the Liberty, you picked the Aces still. Who are you picking to win the WNBA title?
I'm still going to go with the Aces simply because I think when they do bust out game plan stuff that is a little bit more specialized and in some closer games, I do think their experience and their ability to play together more comfortably will win out. And I would imagine we see the Liberty look human again at some point before the end of the season, and we might start to feel a little differently about them again. But right now, it's really hard to, like, those odds you listed off feel pretty crazy to me. I don't think that the Liberty part of it is wrong. I just think the Aces still being that big of a minus favorite is kind of wild.
I'm going Liberty still. I'm sticking with it. I feel even better about it now.
Well, yeah, you picked it just to have a little bit more variety in our show that day, but now it's looking good.
Yeah, the last two games have just been impressive in so many different ways, and I would be feeling the moment. I don't know how I feel about this, Brendon. Sometimes, like, the nerds will be like, momentum isn't a real thing, and I'm often, like, in alignment with, like, the analytics side of it and getting the data and, like, thinking about these things. But I kind of think momentum and energy is, like, a real thing, and I think I do.
Momentum maybe less so. I definitely think confidence is a thing, and those kind of go hand
Yes,
in
that's
hand.
that's a better word for it. I think the Liberty, are really going to have a springboard coming out of this, finish the regular season strong, and to be in a really good spot come the playoffs.
I mean, it's the same as anything, right? You have a plan, you execute it, and it works. Of course, you're going to feel like that's working, and you can feel it physically. They're owning these games. physically too. The Liberty had 4 rebounds, I think, in the second, or the Aces had 4 rebounds in the second half. I mean,
Becky Hammond, that was the longest
tangible.
Becky Hammond court I saw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those Sabrina threes at the beginning of the fourth quarter that really closed the game out both came off of offensive rebounds. So like there's stuff where the confidence and the physicality and kind of the owning of the moment does show up. I think you're absolutely right.
All right. Tournament basketball in professionals, Brendon. I'm telling you, I was maybe like a 6.5 on the NBA tournament, like mildly interested. I'm just kind of all the way in now. I'm like a 8, and I just think it's maybe not year 1. It's gonna feel weird. We're gonna have to get used to it, and like remembering what days are group games and all that stuff. I think by like year 3, this is just gonna feel normal and awesome. And I do think the players are probably gonna care. Maybe not the players that have already won stuff. Like I don't think LeBron's gonna give a shit. I don't know how much like Durant's gonna give a shit. But I think the crop of superstars that haven't won anything are really gonna give a damn about this. And I think I'm just in. I'm excited for it. And I think this proof of concept, I think, is going to really bear out to be successful. I'm pretty all in on this.
Yeah, I think it was De'Aaron Fox. I tried to find the tweet who expressed some like, yeah, this matters to us, like of course it does. And yeah, here we go. I think it's he said, "I'm so about it. Obviously, we've never done it before, but other basketball leagues and soccer leagues do it, and they seem to love it. And it's the Kings, right? Like, I think the Kings are a perfect example of a team that would really, really go for it. They were talking about on the broadcast yesterday that they were, speaking with Aces players, and that even the taste of kind of winning something like that last year went a long way for their confidence to, feel like they accomplished something on their way to eventually winning their first title as a group. So I think it absolutely matters for the athletes, and if it matters to the athletes, which I think was the biggest concern on the NBA side, of course it's going to matter to the fans. It's always going to bleed down from how the actual teams compete and talk about it and all that. And De'Aaron Fox is like, he's an all-star level player who's already showing that he's down for it. So I think, honestly, it's old dudes who have covered the NBA too long just being grumpy and trying to pretend like it's nothing when we have no idea. 1, we haven't seen it yet. And 2, there's a bunch of reasons why it could be awesome. So let it happen.
One last thing I forgot to ask you about earlier, should have. Kathy Engelbert was on the broadcast. She was talking about expansion. She says they hope to have... Your eye roll tells me you're on the same page with this. She said they hope to have an answer by the end of the year, but she's like, it's down to 10 cities. How is it August and you want to announce them at the end of the year, but you have 10 cities in consideration? This doesn't make any sense to me.
I don't know. She also changed the number like 15 times in the first 6 months of this year, and now she's settled on 10. She said 10 at one point, then went back to 20. Seems like 10's the real answer. I'm not sure what's maybe there's like an intern messing with the Google Sheet, deleting some of the line items. They're all American cities. I'm not sure how hard it is to keep track of a list. But
seriously, Toronto's not on the list?
TBD. I don't know what's on the. I don't know if there is a list. This seems to be very intangible and hard to really pin down. But no, they also flew to Denver, her and some league execs, to see about a group there that wanted to show off where they would play and what the practice facility would be and everything. What the thing I'm more I don't want to say more interested. Of course, the cities matter, but it's probably just going to be 2, I would guess, at least in this first round. And to me, just as important as the cities is what is the ownership group like? And not just because obviously you want good ownership, but how much of a focus is it for the W to find NBA teams that want to have a team versus independent? And it seems like they're going to go the independent route, which will tell us a lot about how they see the future of the league, especially considering how closely tied it's been to the NBA for as long as it's existed. And if you read certain quotes, like problematically connected to the NBA, to where the NBA might be holding it back. So I'm intrigued to see if they find some of these independent owners that are able to make some decisions and give them some more independence and some real legs and, something to stand on. But I don't know if that's Denver. We'll see.
Spend some money.
Spend some money and just be creative, do stuff. Don't just follow the path that the NBA is encouraging or that exactly how the NBA grew its business. It's a different business. It's a different game. It's a different league. Act like it and have people who are bought into that,
Yeah. All right, let's end there. Thanks to Dylan Heiser for production. Shout out to Homage again. Go buy something using our link below. Some of the money comes back to support the show. Back again on Monday. We're going to do a reaction to episodes 1 through 3 of Winning Time. We're going to talk a little bit about, maybe we'll see if there's any fallout from Aces Liberty round 4. Maybe we'll get to more James Harden telling teenagers that Daryl Morey is a liar. All in good time. We'll see what happens between now and then. Until then, enjoy the basketball. Talk to y'all next time.